Hello everyone, welcome to the next class of economics, and today I'm going to teach the next topic, that is the what is modern methods of farming and comparative study of modern methods and traditional methods of farming. Though we have already discussed what is modern method of farming, and as I've already told you that what are the major reasons for adoption of modern methods of farming, like as the you already know that what were the reasons that we need to increase the production from the same piece of land, because the population was growing, so that is why we were in need of sudden demands of foods. So definitely once the production is going to increase, then only the food requirements are going to be fulfilled. Then with the increase in population, there will be also need in the increase in income. So definitely when there will be more surplus, the more sales could be possible and it will generate more income, and definitely all these will add up to the standard of living, upliftment of standard of living. Okay, so basically when we talk about what is modern methods of farming, since I've already discussed uh, in the last video that you have seen, modern methods of farming was one of the practices that was practiced in India during 1960s, which is also considered to be major victory of India, that is the Green Revolution, which led to higher production of food grains. And you know that it was introduced by who introduced Green Revolution in India? Kindly answer the question in the comment box. Okay, so basically when we talk about modern methods of farming, there are few combinations which are very necessary for increasing the production. That was HYB seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, plus a lot of capital intensive, and this is one of the capital intensive techniques which was adopted by the farmers, by the prosperous farmers, so that the production from the same field can be increased. Okay, so just before I share my screen to you, this is just a reminder that you can take out your notebook so that you can jot down the important points. Okay, so moving on to our next slide, that is comparative study of modern and traditional method of farming. Before, what is modern methods of farming, you can just check here. The word modern methods of farming means the use of modern technology, techniques, and science for increasing farming productions by using the combinations of HYB seeds, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides, etc. I hope now you are much clear with the meaning of modern methods of farming. Moving on to the next slide. So the first comparison between modern methods and traditional methods. Before I begin with this particular difference, I would like to take you back to traditional methods of farming. Traditional methods of farming are what? These are the traditional ways or traditional techniques of producing the farming production, farm products. Okay, so or agricultural products through manure, through natural fertilizers, so these and through seeds. So we are not using here any specialized seeds or fertilizers that is chemical based, but we are clearly doing the production with the help of all the things which are naturally available to us. So that is what differentiates from modern methods to traditional methods. Now moving on to the first difference. Can you see this compost and manure that is being highlighted in picture 1? And in picture 2, you can see that chemical fertilizer is being used. So the first, compost and manure, is generally used for carrying the traditional methods of farming, whereas chemical fertilizers are very much needed in modern methods of farming, because these are highly dependent upon chemical fertilizers. Moving on to the next slide. Labor intensive and capital intensive. What do you mean by labor intensive and capital intensive? Labor intensive, that means more of laborers or man workforce is required to carry out the production process, whereas when you see the capital intensive nature, this is generally done in traditional methods of farming, modern methods of farming, because instead of using manpower, we are replacing manpower with machineries. Okay, that means it is in capital intensive in nature, because most of the work of this technique through most of the work of if we are carrying or doing the production, most of the work of modern methods of farming are being generally done by machineries. Okay, so that is why it is considered to be capital intensive technique, because it has to replace labor with the help of machines, and that is why it's expensive as compared to the traditional methods of farming, because purchasing machines and then doing the production tools, so definitely it will be a costly affair as compared to the labor intensive technique. Moving on to the next slide. Now you can see this is how we practice irrigation system, because if farming is there, then definitely it has to take up the irrigation process into consideration, because without, what is irrigation? That is watering the fields. So unless and until you water the fields, that is obviously with the which are where the fields are grown with the crops, so definitely it will require so many inputs. That is, water is one of the major ingredient for it, for doing or for carrying the production process. So in the same way, we require different techniques of irrigating the land. Whether we talk about traditional methods of farming, we require comparatively less water as compared to the modern methods of farming. In traditional methods of farming, we require less water, because you know that since the process is very natural, so that is why we are not dependent upon huge water supply. Say for example, you can see there are some of the methods of irrigation which have been shown in the image or in the slide. That is Dhekli chain pump, you can see, which is also known as Persian wheel. You can see small buckets are being fitted, and then once it's rotate, it used to water. Then we have moat, so that is pulley system. Then this is, sorry, chain pump is not what I've told you, water Persian wheel, but you can see that I think lever system, this one is one of the systems of Persian wheel. Moving on to the next slide. Modern farming techniques, you know that it require it, as I've told you, since HYV seed is the major combination which is required for increasing the production from the same piece of land. So HYV seed, that is high yielding variety seeds, you know that it consumes lots and lots of water. That is the reason that we need to irrigate much more as compared to traditional methods of farming, because in traditional methods of farming we do not require much amount of water, but when we are doing farming with the help of modern techniques, then definitely there is huge requirement of water, because HYV seeds consume lot of water. So since it consumes lots of water, we need to irrigate more as compared to the traditional methods of farming. So there are, so we cannot be definitely dependent upon the natural system of irrigation, because it is very uncertain. So that is why we depend, or we have to make an alternative for irrigation purposes, and that is why we practice through sprinkler system, drip irrigation, surge irrigation, flood irrigation. So these are some of the techniques wherein huge water is supplied to the crops, so that it can grow in a better way. Okay, so now moving on to the next difference. See, as I have said that it is one of the labor intensive technique, and it is capital intensive technique. Labor intensive, that is traditional method of farming, and machines are used for plowing. That means I'm talking about a capital intensive nature. I hope you are able to uh, understand that which one is traditional methods of farming and which one is modern method. Definitely animals, when are used for plowing, we are considering it as a traditional method of farming, whereas tractors are used for plowing purposes. Again, we have intended the machines for this purpose, so it's a capital intensive technique. Next, it's an overview of all the differences that we have talked. There can be more differences added to it as per your understanding. As I've told you that traditional methods of farming are less expensive, whereas modern methods of farming are most expensive techniques of production. So it's just a review. You can see that it is, that we have already talked about uses of manure and compost. In traditional methods of farming, modern methods of farming, we use chemical fertilizers. Then we move on to the second difference: more farm laborers and no machines. That is why we are focusing upon labor intensive technique. And when we talk about less farm laborers and more machines, we focus on to capital intensive technique. Then we are dependent upon seasonal rainfall, or we may practice a normal irrigation system. But when we are talking about a well occupied irrigation system which is not dependent upon seasonal rainfall, we are again talking about modern methods of farming. Why we need to irrigate more in modern methods of farming? Because HYB seeds absorbs a lot of water. Then animals are used to plow the fields, whereas tractors, you have seen that it has replaced, animals have been replaced by machines, that is tractors. So plowing is used. Production is less, but the crops are of high quality, definitely. Production is less in traditional methods of farming, and that is why farmers need to switch on to modern methods of farming. And why am I saying why I've always added a term prosperous farmers? Because modern methods of farming is a bit expensive technique of production which cannot be um, practiced by the normal farm laborers unless and until they do not employ a lot of capital, lot of amount into the production process. Modern methods of farming cannot be practiced because HYB seeds, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, these cost huge sum of money, and then with addition to the machines, so which is not a normal expense as compared to the traditional methods of farming. And when we see that, definitely we have used HYV seeds, we have used the other combination, and so production is more, but the quality is little less, because that uh, because the quality is not good of not very good of modern methods of farming, because a lot of chemical fertilizers have been utilized in order to protect the crops, which might degrade the quality of the product. Thank you so much.